After cleaning out my old bedroom, I found my entire collection of bootleg DVDs that I used to watch as a kid. I'm going to watch all of them and rate them on Letterboxd to find out which one is my favorite. Hello everybody, the name's Ari, and welcome to my bootleg collection. Holes is a 2003 Disney movie starring Shia LaBeouf, Cleo Thomas, Sigourney Weaver, Jon Voight, Patricia Arquette, and Tim Blake Nelson. The movie is based on the 1998 YA novel of the same name, and the book's author wrote the screenplay for the film. I saw the movie on the weekend it came out with my family during Easter. I was 5 at the time, so I wasn't really able to understand the movie and its themes very well. The last time I watched this movie was when I read the book for my 5th grade English class, but I didn't care for the book since it was a required reading. Now that I'm older, I want to finally rewatch the movie now that I'm old enough to understand the story and the complex themes in it. This is 2003's Holes. The movie starts with some boys digging in a desert. One of the boys, Barfbag, gets a rattlesnake to bite his foot, despite the other kids trying to talk him out of it. We then see the main character, Stanley Yelnats IV, being transported through the desert in a school bus. He explains that a pair of shoes fell from the sky that turned out to be shoes of a famous baseball player. The police arrest him believing that he stole them, and he's taken to court. His family believes it's due to the family curse, and his mom reassures him that they can prove his innocence in court. Unfortunately, due to his family not being able to afford a lawyer, Stanley isn't able to prove his innocence, and the judge sentences him to a juvenile detention camp called Camp Green Lake. Stanley arrives at the camp surprised that there isn't a lake, and he meets the camp counselors Mr. Sir and Dr. Pendensky, who give him a tour of the camp. He quickly realizes how brutal the camp is when Mr. Sir tells him that the camp has the only source of fresh water in the area, and the rattlesnakes and yellow-spotted lizards will kill him if he ever tries to run away. Stanley and the other campers find out that Barfbag is still recovering from the rattlesnake bite, and he won't be coming back to camp. Stanley meets his bunkmates, X-Ray, Squid, Armpit, Magnet, Zigzag, and Zero. Zero barely talks to anybody, so Dr. Pendensky gives him the nickname because he thinks that Zero is stupid. As part of their sentencing, they all have to dig holes in the desert since the counselors believe that digging will help them build character. If they ever find something interesting while digging, they'll get the rest of the day off. Despite the miserable circumstances, Stanley is able to adjust to life at the camp. He befriends his bunkmates and they give him the nickname Caveman. Stanley ends up becoming close with Zero, who admits to Stanley that he's illiterate, and Stanley teaches Zero how to read in exchange for helping Stanley dig his holes. Eventually, Zero reveals his real name is Hector Zeroni. X-Ray, the group's leader, tells him that if he ever finds anything, he has to give it to him, so X-Ray can finally get a day off. Stanley agrees in order to stay on his good side. Stanley ends up finding a golden tube with KB engraved on it, and he gives it to X as part of their agreement. X-Ray turns in the gold tube the next day, and it gets the attention of the warden, who rewards X-Ray with a day off. The warden is shown to have newspapers and wanted posters of a woman named Kate Barlow. Stanley realizes that the gold tube is actually a tube of lipstick belonging to a famous outlaw named Kissin' Kate Barlow. She was notorious for killing men and kissing their cheeks and leaving a lipstick mark on their face. In a few flashbacks, the movie reveals that Camp Green Lake used to be a thriving town surrounding a lake. Kate Barlow was a teacher that taught the local kids and adults how to read. Trout Walker, a man whose family owns the town's lake, tries to ask her out, but she rejects him. Kate instead falls in love with Sam, a black onion farmer who sells onions to the local townspeople, and makes onion juice to protect the miners from yellow-spotted lizards, a poisonous lizard that kills you instantly. One night, Trout sees Kate and Sam kissing, and he reveals their relationship to the locals. A mob forms and burns down the schoolhouse, and Sam is murdered on his way back from his onion farm from across the lake. After Sam's death, Kate Barlow becomes an outlaw, and the town's lake dries up and the town becomes deserted. Through another series of flashbacks, Stanley's family tells him that his family had a curse placed on them by Madame Zeroni, a fortune teller, when Stanley's great-great-grandfather Elia Yelnats was given a pig to raise and give to a woman who ended up not wanting to marry him. He then moves to America, but Elia forgot to take Madame Zeroni up the mountain and sing a lullaby to her in exchange for giving him the pig, and she warned him that she'll place a curse on him if he doesn't repay her. So now the family has a curse that's lasted ever since. One of Stanley's ancestors, Stanley Yelnats I, made a fortune off of the stock market market, but his fortune was stolen by kissing Kate Barlow, and she left him for dead. Stanley I was able to survive in the desert because he found refuge on God's thumb, but nobody knew what he meant by that. Kate buries the treasure somewhere in the desert, and she lets a lizard bite her, and she dies before Trout Walker can get her to tell him where she hid the treasure. After Stanley gets caught by the counselors and the warden for teaching Zero to read, Zero hits Dr. Pendensky in the face with a shovel after Pendensky mocks his intelligence. Zero runs out into the desert and doesn't return to camp. The warden and the counselors destroy Zero's file since Zero had no family and was a ward of the state. They assume he'll die in the desert, so they need to cover up his death just in case. Stanley, angry that no one is going out to look for Zero, crashes Mr. Sir's truck and runs out into the desert to find Zero. Stanley eventually finds Zero sleeping under a boat that's revealed to be Sam's boat, where he died after being shot at the lake. Stanley and Zero find a mountain that resembles a thumb, and Stanley realizes that it was the god's thumb that Stanley I was referring to. Stanley and Zero slowly make their way up the mountain, but Zero becomes ill, and Stanley carries him the rest of the way. Stanley eventually makes it to the top of the mountain while carrying Zero, and they find a stream of water in Sam's old onion garden. Stanley and Zero eat the onions and drink the water from the stream. Stanley sings a lullaby that was passed down by his ancestors, and Stanley unknowingly fulfills the promise to Madame Zeroni, since Zero is a descendant of Madame Zeroni, and he breaks the family curse. Zero confesses to Stanley that he was the one that actually stole the shoes that Stanley was blamed for. Zero was homeless and took the shoes thinking that they were donated to the homeless shelter he stayed at, and he didn't know the shoes were valuable. Scared of getting arrested, he throws the shoes away and accidentally hits Stanley, and Stanley gets blamed for it. Stanley accepts his apology, and they decide to go back to camp when Stanley realizes that Kate Barlow hid the treasure where he found the tube of lipstick. They find the treasure chest, and the warden and the counselors try to take the chest from them, but yellow-spotted lizards pop out of the hole. The lizards don't bite Stanley or Hector since they ate a bunch of onions, and the lizards hate the smell of onions. The warden reveals that she's the granddaughter of Trout Walker, and her family has been looking for Kate Barlow's treasure ever since she died. The counselors wait all night for the lizards to bite the boys, but the lizards don't bother them. Stanley's lawyer shows up the next morning along with the police after Stanley was proven innocent. The warden tries to take the chest, claiming it's her property, but the chest turns out to have Stanley's name engraved on it, since he shares the same name with Stanley I. The police declare the chest is his property and he's allowed to keep it. Stanley's lawyer gets ready to take him home, but he refuses to leave without Zero. Since the warden destroyed Zero's file, he's able to leave the camp. The police find out that Mr. Sir is a criminal that violated his parole, and Pendensky is not a real doctor. The warden and the counselors are all arrested, and the police order an investigation into the camp. Then it finally rains at the camp for the first time in over 100 years. Stanley's family opens a chest and agrees to share half of the money with Zero. Zero uses the money to help find his missing mom, and both of their families become next-door neighbors. Camp Green Lake gets shut down, and the remaining kids were sent to real counselors. Stanley's family uses the money to finance Stan Lee's dad's invention to get rid of foot odor, and the movie ends with Zero, Stanley, and their friends from camp enjoying a pool day. The thing that I enjoyed the most about this movie is the way that colored people were portrayed in the movie. If you watch my video about Netflix romance movies, you'd know how distasteful I believe the movies are on the platform. So it was really surprising that a movie from the early 2000s figured out the secret to writing characters that are people of color. Holes lets the characters be characters, and not props meant to just add conflict to the white characters. For one, I can actually remember their names. Sam, X-Ray, Armpit, Magnet, Zero, Sweet Feet, and Madame Zeroni. All of these characters are people that I could relate to, and I knew their motivations. Sam is a humble onion farmer who helps out however he can. X-Ray is the leader of D-Tent, and he wants to finally get a day off since he's been at the camp for 6 months. Armpit is a kid who gets his nickname because he stinks, and he prefers his nickname to his real name. Magnet is Hispanic and speaks Spanish frequently, and he likes animals and hates how animals are held in captivity. He was convicted for stealing a purebred puppy that was worth $1,000. Zero is a homeless kid who lost his mom, and he's illiterate. He took the pair of shoes that Stanley was accused of stealing, not knowing they were donated by a famous baseball player. Sweet Feet is a famous baseball player that donated his shoes to the homeless shelter he used to live in. He was heartbroken that somebody would try to steal it, and he ended up becoming friends with Stanley and Zero after finding out that it was a misunderstanding. Madame Zeroni is a wise fortune teller that told Stanley's great-great-grandfather to move to America like her son, and she wanted him to help her up the mountain in exchange for giving him advice. She laid a curse on him for forgetting to fulfill his promise, and the family suffered until Stanley made things right and helped Zero, who's a descendant of Madame Zeroni. All of the characters I mentioned were all three-dimensional characters with their own motivations and personalities. They were all portrayed as just regular people. Stanley's friends at the camp were just portrayed as regular kids that just made mistakes in life. The other boys treated them all with dignity and respect, and the adults that mistreated them were punished. Zero told Stanley that he didn't know how to read, and Stanley didn't mock him or berate him. Stanley taught Zero how to read, and Zero told Stanley his real name. Hector was able to feel empowered after he learned to read, and he was able to fight back against the adults mocking his intelligence. When Stanley calls Armpit by his birth name, Armpit corrects him, and Stanley doesn't question it or mock his nickname. He just calls Armpit by his preferred name. The boys all treat each other with respect, no matter what race they are. It's highly unfortunate that a 19-year-old movie showed more tasteful portrayals of people of color than movies on Netflix from this year. It was really refreshing to see, and I wish that more movies would take this into account. I find it hard to put into words how much I liked the movie. I loved how some people's fates were determined by the actions of their ancestors, and how some people were able to not make the same mistakes. I love the portrayal of kids trying to better themselves, but the government doesn't help them in any way to try to better themselves. It's an unfortunate reality that a lot of juveniles must deal with to this day. The portrayal of characters that are people of color was very refreshing to see for a movie that's almost 19 years old. I love that the book's author was able to adapt his book for the big screen, and the director was able to bring that vision to life. I wish that other book adaptations were given the same treatment, and I want other authors to be able to have their books have respectful adaptations too. Holes is a timeless classic that needs to be talked about more. 5 stars. Thank you everybody for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, it really does help me out. Also, let me know in the comments if any of you guys have seen Holes or read the book. Unfortunately, I had to cut out a section of this video where I discussed the movie's soundtrack. If you'd like to hear my thoughts on it, I have the full version of this video on my Patreon. If you'd like to join me on my journey of watching all of my bootleg DVDs, make sure to subscribe so you know when I upload a new episode. There'll be new episodes every month until I watch all of them. Now let's add Holes to the stack.
Holes. Now on Disney DVD and Video.